Oh, so glad you found us. This right here is the Slate, the sports edition. Why? Because we are not devoted to one singular sport. Oh, no. We'll bounce around like you read about. Here with you for the next 45 minutes or so, I am Adam Kaufman. The smarter guy who's also better looking and has a nicer shirt is Reid T. Fowler. How are you, sweet T?
Good. That's a trifecta right there. Smarter, better looking, better dressed, more cultured, knows more movies, knows more about movies.
Sure, yeah, has more money.
Better read, more literate.
Yeah.
I mean, the list goes on.
Oh, I feel inferior in every way imaginable, but I'm going to try. Reid, to make it through this show. And let's dive in, not just with, well, I guess I should tell the people. We have a bevy of things we're going to hit on. Of course, Major League Baseball playoffs are underway. There's a game going on right now. We got the Red Sox and Rays, start of the ALDS going on later tonight. Matter of fact, based on my clock, it's about 3 hours away from first pitch. Got the Shriners contest going on the PGA. I know that is near and dear to your heart, as are the children, naturally. So we'll talk about that as well. But a whole lot of football, and it begins, of course, with Thursday night football, which is also about 3 hours away. And Reid, so often, whether it's Thursday, Sunday, Monday, I mean, really, we talk about it every week. The primetime games this year so far in the NFL, about a month in, have been pretty good. Tonight, though, it's not just, I wonder if we're going to get a good game because it's another primetime game. Tonight is, we should get a good game. We should get a nice high-scoring game, a game that we have talked about on other videos we've done here for DraftKings, because this is a legit contest. This is a game that you get excited about no matter when it's played. I'm talking LA Rams and Seattle Seahawks battle in the NFC West. What are your expectations?
Yeah, in Seattle, if you're Brendan Glasheen, you call them programs, other programs that we have. And also he watches
I hesitate to call
reruns of Murder She Wrote.
45-second video that we did a program.
Yeah, no, no one calls them programs anymore unless you have plastic on your couch.
Or you read the TV guide.
Oh, the TV guides were actually pretty cool. I used to collect them. I did it. My grandparents did, and I had fun. Anyway, we're getting off track.
We didn't love doing the crossword. It was the best.
Yes. The Thursday night game, it should be a good one, right? And we're getting back-to-back weeks, Kyle, for the NFC West. The NFC West teams are going up against each other. And this is this carousel, right? Of Seattle plays San Francisco well. San Francisco usually plays Arizona well, right? And it kind of goes in this carousel. But in this one specifically, look, I mean, Seattle needs this, right? Seattle needs this game. The Rams also trying to figure out, okay, what happened in Arizona? And when you take a look at the line right now, it's at 2, and it was for the majority of today, it was at 2.5. So you're seeing a lot of it go back now on Seattle side. Maybe a lot of people talking about the home field advantage, betting against Russell Wilson is a fool's errand. But I have to agree with the Rams being the favorites here and actually covering this spread. I mean, I like it a lot more at 1, which is what I got it at on Monday. But you take a look, this is an overreaction, Koff. I think this is an overreaction on both sides. And you take a look at how the Rams match up in key areas. Defensive line for the Rams against Seattle's offensive line. It's much better on the Los Angeles Rams side. Even though Russ Wilson can be a magician back there, he's going to be under pressure quite a bit. And what that means is that you're going to have to get the ball out quickly. And who are you going to do that to, right? You don't have a quick hitting tight end. Chris Carson, we still don't know what the status is. Probably it's a game time decision. But I'd lean toward him not playing. And if he is, it's going to be on a snap count, and maybe he's a decoy. Then you got DK Metcalf, who hasn't had great games against Jalen Ramsey. And then Tyler Lockett, who's coming in banged up. Look, Russell Wilson has to do a lot of this himself. But what we never talk about is defensive linemen, specifically against a quarterback. And Aaron Donald has been fantastic at getting to Russell Wilson in his tenure with the Rams. It's like he has his offensive line's number. Like Russell Wilson knows every single time he's playing Aaron Donald, the Rams, that he's going to get sacked probably twice. And that's going to wreak havoc on getting those plays downfield. And so I still do like the Rams here at -2. I just think there's those key matchups, the pass catchers for the Rams, especially a guy like Cooper Kupp, who lines up, in line or in the slot. That's where it's difficult for Seattle to defend. We've seen that over the past few weeks. And so I like the Rams here at -2.
So you mentioned Aaron Donald. He has sacked Russell Wilson 13 times in his career, is the most he has gotten to any quarterback in the NFL. So you're absolutely right, obviously, as to what that defensive line is capable of doing there for the Rams. However, just something to think about here. The Rams defense, Reid, is vulnerable. You look at obviously the last couple of games. You've got, and I've got some numbers here in front of me that I was looking up. 61 points allowed to the Cardinals and the Bucks the last couple of Sundays, 27th in yards allowed in the league, 18th in points allowed in the NFL as well. It's a team that naturally, you know, I think you think about Aaron Donald, 3-time defensive player of the year. You think about some of the other talent, obviously, in the secondary as well. And you just, you know, you talk yourself into, man, this is an elite defense. And I think they have elite defensive personnel for sure. There's nobody doubting that. But in terms of what they've done through 4 games, where obviously the team overall is 3-1, it's been led by that offense. The defense is not good to this point. It doesn't mean it won't turn around over the course of the year. Of course, we're only this is week 5 out of 18 weeks overall, 17 games per team. It's a long way to go. I get it. But right now it is a very, as I use the word, very vulnerable defense that, I just think, yes, Lockett's banged up. DK Metcalf has also been limited with a foot injury during the week. He's banged up. Those are your 2 guys. Those are your elite pass catchers in that offense. You got the running back questions where, like you said, who knows if Chris Carson's going to play. If he doesn't, Alex Collins certainly is a guy who becomes that much more viable, whether it's in terms of various props you might look at on the DK Sportsbook, certainly in terms of going for the million tonight on the DraftKings site and looking at those contests in the lobby. And we'll get to DFS and sports betting and all of it. But this game on the whole, I think it's going to be a shootout. I don't think defense will be a factor in the game, and that, you might get a pick or 2. You'll certainly get some sacks. Absolutely. But I wouldn't go anywhere near playing either defense if I'm building a lineup, let's say. I think this is going to be an offensive showcase.
Yeah. Look, like you mentioned, right? Like you look at the teams that the Rams have played in back-to-back weeks, right? In Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Arizona Cardinals. Offenses. Both of them have total offense, right? If you take a look at what they've done, right? 446 and 465 yards total for both of those teams, right? You're talking about powerhouse offenses with Tampa Bay because they have so many weapons. And Kyler Murray looks like Josh Allen did last year, right? He's coming into his own, and that's what he's doing. Cliff Kingsbury is finally getting him into the right positions to be effective. You look at those first 2 games in Chicago and Indy, right? Like, 322 total, 354 total. Like, I don't think that this defense is necessarily bad, but they've gone up against arguably the top 2 or 3 offenses in the NFL right now, right? The Kansas City, Buffalo, obviously come to mind when you talk about offensive powerhouses. But the Cardinals and the Bucks are some of the 2 best defenses. And you're right. Look, and when you look at the stats, it doesn't necessarily line up. But what worries me about the over, and we've seen, right, this sort of a narrative play again. This is sort of a play against the narrative, is that we've talked about it too. We've seen a lot of overs hit in prime time, right? We've seen a lot of exciting games. And if we see Washington and New York hit overs, and then we have these 2 offenses and Seattle too, keep in mind, Kauf, Seattle's time of possession is like the league's lowest. The amount of offensive plays that they run is like the league's lowest. And so what that does is, and then what you want to do if the Rams have a stout offense like you're saying they do, and of course they do, you're trying to keep them on the sideline. I think Seattle wants to keep this game 25-21 or 20, right? Keep it that low, because if it becomes a shootout, I promise you this, the Rams are going to beat the Seahawks 9 times out of 10. Because of the Seattle defense, not necessarily because that this is an indictment on the Seattle offense, but the Seattle defense is not good. They're dead last in pass. They are close to dead last in run defense. Yep. They're not good, and they can't put pressure on the quarterback. That's why I think that Seattle wants to keep this a low-scoring game, and that's why I think Alex Collins makes a lot of sense from a pivot standpoint. If Chris Carson is in, I think Alex Collins is even a better play. But that's what scares me about the over and the shootout. I want it to be. It's much more fun to watch, but I'd probably stay away from that. And if that's the case, I still think that the Rams, giving 2, and this is less than a field goal, I just don't see how the Rams are a team that on a neutral setting is, only 2 points better. right? Like it's not the case.
As Reid said, line was 2.5. It's 2 right now in the DK Sportsbook. The Rams are favored on the road. It's in Seattle, a place Matt Stafford has never won. Now, granted, he hasn't been in the division for a long time. It's his first year with the Rams, but 0-3, including a playoff loss a few years ago when he was a member, obviously, of the Detroit Lions. The over-under set at 53.5, as obviously we were just talking a whole lot about that. So, if you're thinking about Stafford, now this Seahawks defense has it's second best in the NFL converting, or pardon me, let me see. Now that number applies to something different. Forget about that. But in terms of the Seattle defense, banged up certainly on the defensive line. Strengths for the Rams, weakness for the Seahawks at this point. We know what obviously Matt Stafford has been so far this year. He's, averaging 300 plus passing yards per game. He's sitting at 12-22 overall, 11 touchdowns, couple interceptions. He's had great protection in front of him. He's only been sacked 3 times through 4 games. And, I just don't think he's the type of guy that's going to go into Seattle and worry about, skeletons in his closet or anything like that. I think he's going to look at the offensive weapons he has around him, and he's going to be extraordinarily confident. We were joking earlier about some of the other videos that we've done talking about this game. And I just think that, Stafford obviously is going to be a very logical play for people when it comes to daily fantasy. I think most people are going to try and wedge both those quarterbacks in their lineups and maybe even potentially captain one of those guys. And then obviously you're looking down at value. A lot of ownership is going to go around for a guy like Alex Collins as a salary saver, especially if Chris Carson doesn't play. But when you're considering some of the upper echelon options, you got to think obviously about those passing targets and pass catching options for the Rams. Cooper Kupp has been sensational this year, and he's getting a third of the targets from Matt Stafford. Obviously a guy that, some people might end up fading just because of price tag or differentiation, not because you think he's going to be bad. I do wonder, just to build on something that you and I were talking about in, again, another setting here for DraftKings, paying down a few grand basically for Bobby Trees, Robert Woods. Woods obviously, he had a touchdown last week. We know what he's capable of. He hasn't been very good this year as compared to Kupp. Certainly has not been remotely on that level, but a guy who could be a sneaky play tonight.
Yeah. How much talk, right, has been Bobby Trees squeaky wheel gets the grease, over the last 4 days. So that's what you have to keep in mind, right? If you keep on hearing or reading articles that Robert Woods is the contrarian play, he's no longer the contrarian play, right? Because so much of how this happens is it's narrative, it's sentiment, it's how do you gain leverage off the field when you're having these single game showdowns. And look, Bobby Trees, we know what he can do. We know that he's one of the premier wide receivers when he gets the ball. But what we didn't expect is that he wasn't going to get, essentially no rushing yards or attempts at all. This is something that he's been doing throughout his career, is getting those jet sweeps. He's not getting those. Darrell Henderson is looking like he's a guy that you want to either acquire in season long, because if he's getting 90% of the snaps in this backfield in this offense, he could be potentially a top 5, top 6 running back. I just take a look at the matchups, and yes, Bobby Trees, if that sentiment stays low, if that ownership stays low or projected ownership stays low, then absolutely, right? He could on prime time, he could absolutely shell out. What I will say though, the matchup for Cooper Kupp, and if Cooper Kupp now is the guy that everyone is saying, oh, there's no way you defend against a guy like Cooper Kupp and scheme against Cooper Kupp. He's not that receiver. He's not Devontae Adams. He's not a Travis Kelce. He's not a Tyreek Hill. He's not any of those guys. Then that's when you play him, especially when he's the most expensive guy on the slate. And he's going up against a guy in Hugo Amadi, who's has the second lowest PFF coverage grade in the NFL right now. And Seattle gets gashed across the middle with guys that are lining up tight in the slot. And guess where Cooper Kupp's going to spend more than half of his snaps tonight? It's in that position. If that's the case, his prop right now is over 6.5 receptions. I like the over at -145. And look, if Cooper Kupp is not going to be heavily rostered because everyone thinks he's not that guy, there's no way he can score 2 touchdowns every single game. Like, absolutely, I'm going to take Cooper Kupp because he's clearly been the best guy right now. He's getting double-digit targets in like 3 or 4 games. It's not to say that I don't like Robert Woods at $7,600 in the flex, but if that sentiment keeps on going up and up and up, I'm going right above him in Darrell Henderson at 8,400, or I want to be rostering a lot of Cooper Kupp and be overweight in the field.
And Cooper Kupp, 12-4. I get about $5,000 more than Robbie Redwood there tonight. He's gone for 26 plus points 3 times. He had obviously the quiet game last week, but I say that with a grain of salt, right? Because yes, he went 5 for 64, no touchdowns, not great. He was still targeted 13 times, Reid. So, I mean, how confident are we that just in terms of game script and what we anticipate from the offenses and just Kupp's role and what it's been? I mean, targets are, going back to week 1, it's 10, 11, 12, 13. So is he getting 14 targets tonight? Is the pattern continuing?
Yeah, that'd be great, right? It's to get 14 and keep increasing until week 17, where he's getting 25.
That's right.
Targets a game. No, yeah, I mean, but like you can probably project 11, 12, right? I mean, 11 or 12 targets, that is elite. That is Devontae Adams, right? In terms of volume share, in terms of targets. And that's the only thing that we can potentially hope for, right? And project our targets because of what he's saying. And if you look at Cooper Kupp, he leads the league in a myriad of receiving categories right now, right? Like top 5 in targets, receptions, yards after catch, explosive plays. I mean, this guy is unbelievable right now, right? The hashtag breakfast or the hash brown breakfast narrative, where these guys are just eating together, chomping down on some oatmeal and whatever they eat, and scheming right now. And so if that's the case, like Cooper Kupp at 12-4, I get it. It's a lot of money, especially for a guy that last year that wasn't worth 12-4, right? And all of us in season long thought Robert Woods was the guy. We're going to draft Robert Woods higher than Cooper Kupp. That definitely still plays a factor in right now that maybe people don't believe that Cooper Kupp is this guy. Newsflash, he is. 11 targets on average, 11, 12 targets on average. Yeah, sign me up.
Let's take a look here at Woods' game log just out of curiosity. So his target, he hasn't hit 10 targets yet. He's a 4.966. So he's a guy that's averaging essentially 6 targets a game, 6, 7, somewhere in that vicinity. He's good catch radius for the most part, or catch rate, I should say. He hasn't come close to sniffing 100 yards, obviously just a couple of touchdowns to this point. How different a guy has he looked to you versus what we saw last year?
I mean, he looks fine. He's not the receiver who's gonna speak up, right? And say, like, I want the ball. He's not that type of guy. And so if they're winning, if he's winning, he doesn't care. I think that the offense right now has so many weapons at their disposal. And Robert Woods is that last guy out, right? Van Jefferson is getting work, although I think that I'd rather play Robert Woods over Van Jefferson in this matchup. Desean Jackson is going to get more looks. You bring in him and Sean McVay in their time in Washington. There's a reason why you bring this guy in. And I know that he only had 3 targets and 1 reception, but against Tampa Bay, like it feels like that Desean Jackson, especially in prime time, but taking that aside, is going to show up for big games. Like Sean McVay is going to deploy this guy for big games, right? Like the Tampa Bay game where he goes out and he gets 120 and a tud. It feels like Desean Jackson is going to be that guy because we don't want him to get hurt. So we're not going to use him as much in the games that we know that we can win with three other receivers, 3 really good receivers, and Tyler Higbee, we haven't even touched on yet. Yep. It feels like these big games are going to be Desean Jackson. So I don't mind him as a value play at all, because I do think that there is value over him because you see the game logs and, this is what usually people go through, that you see that Van Jefferson is getting heavily targeted. You see that Cooper Kupp is getting heavily targeted, right? Tyler Higbee is a guy that can get you a touchdown and, is someone as a tight end who's getting elite tight end targets at 5-6 targets a game for a tight end. All of that points to playing Desean Jackson in a single game showdown as well, because we know the upside is there. And I think it's going to be we'll deploy this guy in a big game setting because that's what we need. And we want to keep him healthy.
Beyond the quarterbacks, who are the most reliable studs for you, or, up higher priced guys anyway, even if they're not totally at stud level? Like a Higbee is obviously more of a mid-tier guy. He's 5,600, but guys that sort of that range and up, who are the ones that you're most comfortable with tonight, knowing obviously you're going to have to fade somebody because you can't just pay up everywhere?
Yeah. I mean, it's Cooper Kupp. And look, we talked about all these receivers, all these these guys, these playmakers and catch the ball. I mean, Matt Stafford is definitely there. And he talked about everyone but the quarterbacks. If you can't decide, a la Tom Brady-esque, right? That's somewhat like, I'm obviously worried about DK Metcalf with Jalen Ramsey. I have him on a lot of my fantasy teams. I'm not excited about this, watching DK Metcalf get targeted like 3 or 4 times, maybe in the first series, and then not get another sniff until like the fourth quarter. That sort of Russell Wilson's MO is that he targets him quite a bit, maybe like the open series, like the 20 already designed plays that Pete Carroll has, probably 10 of them are trying to look for DK Metcalf. But then after that, Russell Wilson just does not, for whatever reason, look his way as much as he should. Like this game probably is more on the Seattle side, a Tyler Lockett type of game, right? Like, DK Metcalf is going to be up against Jalen Ramsey, and he just does not have great splits against Jalen Ramsey. Jalen Ramsey is not necessarily playing that shadow. He's playing that star role for this defense. So maybe DK Metcalf gets some work away from Jalen Ramsey, but for the most part, you're going to see Jalen Ramsey number 5 on number 14 here. And it's going to be a matchup that, if you like that kind of stuff, is one to watch. And if that's the case, it's Tyler Lockett, man. Tyler Lockett is someone that, even though banged up, he is the better, more consistent version of Desean Jackson, right? He gets those 60-yard touchdowns like at an unbelievable rate. And if you got to keep on scoring, I mean, you look at his target share, even though the last 2 games has kind of come back down to earth. Mm-hmm. I mean, those first 2 games, you saw him and Cooper Kupp 1 and 2 in the NFL in receiving yards and receiving efficiency. So it seems like a game that if he can stay healthy, he's someone to take a look at. But the top one is probably Cooper Kupp for me.
So I was going to ask you, and really you just answered it, but I want to, keep going with it for a moment. It's something, I mean, we talked about it all the time last season, continues right into this season. I just think it's this offense in Seattle. When you look at it, you say, okay, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, they both obviously have Russell Wilson. The run game will be the run game, whatever it is, but it's those 2 guys. They're generally priced around the same point. They're generally, projected for around the same number of whether it's targets or points or whatever it may be. They're comparable fantasy guys, and they very rarely both go off. I mean, it almost never happens. And so you constantly say to yourself, shoot, I mean, throw season long out the window. If you own one, you play him. But when it comes to DFS, is it a Metcalf week? Is it a Lockett week? And what ultimately is your deciding factor? I mean, is it, you talked about the matchup with Ramsey. Obviously both these guys are banged up, but is it matchup? Is it, who's limping more coming into the game off of their, limitations during practice during the week? What ultimately is the deciding factor for you?
Yeah. When I'm watching Seattle play, whenever they get the ball to DK Metcalf, it's the offense is much more efficient, right? Just the way that the style of which, when they give him the ball, and he can get you those. He's a chain mover, man. He just moves the chains. He hasn't had those big explosive plays like we saw last year, but he's a guy that can change the entire dynamic of a game with one big play. So when I'm watching, the eye test is DK Metcalf. Having said that, though, like I mentioned, Russell Wilson, like it feels like he's much more confident in Tyler Lockett, because Tyler Lockett also is getting the single coverage too, right? Russ does, even though he's got a beautiful deep ball, Russ is very risk adverse when it comes to turning over the ball. It's just nuts. Like, he just doesn't want to do it. He'd rather dump it off to Gerald Everett 5 times for 8 yards, 10 yards, move the chains. And then in those money plays, when you're in the green zone or the red zone, then he finds his player. And that's usually like Jeff Swain. That's usually like a Freddie Swain. Yeah. Sorry. That's usually, Gerald Everett, Will Disley, right? Like the Travis Homer, right? Like that's usually the guy, right? So I would argue that when you're looking, because you're right, they have negative correlation. It's like negative, 0.57 correlation, meaning that they don't play well. Like, they don't both have good games. It's either or. And when you're playing that, you just want to play the guy who's going to be less rostered, right? It's going to be the less rostered player. If you're looking for the Seattle side for the comeback, that's what you want to do. Other than that, right? Like, I would argue that if one were to be out, then the other would be featured. But having said that, it's either or, and I'd probably lean towards Tyler Lockett in this game over DK Metcalf. Even though Tyler Lockett, he has a bad matchup too. Darius Williams is playing pretty well So like I said, the Rams just they match up better in this game, against Seattle over someone like the Cardinals because Kyler Murray is amazing. And look, the original Kyler Murray is Russell Wilson, but he's a little bit older.
You'll notice if people are watching as opposed to just say listening in the background while you're making dinner or something like that, that I've got the screen up on the bottom options, the cheap guys that are available to you in this $1 million contest or whichever contest you're playing. Obviously, you don't have to enter the $15 and chase the million. You could play cash games against your friends or whatever it is that you're doing. Plenty of contests available to you in the DK lobby, but there are a lot of mid-tier guys that are appealing, Reid. There are a lot of obviously higher price guys, or upper echelon guys, studs that are appealing. In terms of the value, it depends how you want to define it, but there's not a ton tonight. Like none of those $200 guys exist tonight that I would think you want to play. I'm looking at it right now. Like you could make a case for Travis Homer, especially if Carson does play and you're thinking, he's going to be limited. He's not going to be the same guy. Homer maybe gets some touches, $1,000 punt play. What the hell? You can justify that. Sony Michel, much as I like him as a Patriots fan, $1,800. He's pretty much been rendered useless unless Henderson exits with an injury. If you're banking on Henderson being Henderson, you're not going to play Sony Michel. You're just not going to do it. Neither defense, I know they're both cheap, but I think we're going to get a lot of points in this one. Yeah, there'll be sacks. There could be a pick. Maybe if you're just banking on differentiation or pick six or something like that, then you're drawn to one of those. But personally, that's not where I would be looking. Obviously, the number one guy is going to be Alex Collins. If in fact we learn Carson's out, he's $3,200. You could maybe make a case for the kickers, especially if you're banking on there being a whole lot of offense tonight. You start to go up a little bit. If Everett doesn't play, Will Dissly, he becomes a factor at $3,800. But I know I rattled off a lot of names, a lot of options. Who do you like best?
Jeff Ulrich is actually hosting this show. But yeah, I actually like Alex Collins if Carson is in a lot more than if Carson is out.
Interesting.
Because the ownership on Collins, if he's out, if Carson is out, is going to go through the roof. Then he's not a leverage play anymore. Then he's not. There's no optimization of his price, because then he's just so heavily rostered that you're not really going to gain over the field. So I'd much rather have Alex Collins, Chris Carson in, and then sequential, like after that, right? Subsequent of that. Mm-hmm. I would, if Alex Collins does get the start and Chris Carson is out, then I like Travis Homer even more. Right. So it's kind of this waterfall, this cascading effect of if Carson is out, I like, right. Like if Carson is in, I like Alex Collins. Carson is out, I actually like Travis Homer more than, because it's the same thing. And on top of that too, if you look at Travis Homer, if Collins is in, Travis Homer is going to be the pass catching back. And if the narrative is that this is going to be a high scoring game, and it is, right, that's easily an outcome to happen, then this guy is the pass catching back. Like you're not seeing it right now, right? 3 targets, 2 targets against Minnesota and Tennessee. Mm-hmm. He is their pass catching back. And Alex Collins is going to be your 15 touch between the tackles, make sure they respect the run, keep the game physical. Yep. And Travis Homer is going to be the guy that comes in, the passing plays, 2-minute drill, and maybe even up tempo when it comes to the fourth quarter if Seattle's down by a lot. So that's how you have to treat it. So you have to make sure that if Carson is in, I like Collins. If Carson is out, I like Travis Homer as a value.
All right. Well, we've spent plenty of time, obviously, DFS on this game, which is coming your way in about 2.5 hours or so. Looking in the Chat Kings conference room, the YouTube chat, see a lot of our familiar friends in there. Robbie Noble, what's up, guy? Good to see you. Congo Cab, CEH. So many others. Of course, EJ is our man, Eamon, our producer. So if you have any questions, throw them out his way. He'll make sure he gets them over to us. And if you're ever looking for us live and you want to be involved and hitting the like and giving questions and getting information and all that stuff, join us for the Slate Monday through Friday. Reid and I are together every Thursday. I'm here Thursday, Friday. Reid is here, I think, Wednesday, Thursday. And, a combination of all of us, we got you Monday through Friday, right around 5 o'clock Eastern. So please do continue to join us. We appreciate you. All right. What about, before we just go to other games and looking ahead to Sunday and some of the other things, baseball and golf, that we want to get to before we're out of here in about 15 minutes. We spent some time from a betting standpoint talking about this game. We talked about the over-under. We talked about the spread. But in terms of prop bets or things along those lines. Anything stand out to you in this game after, we spent all that time talking about performances from those players tonight?
Yeah, so I like Cooper Kupp. I like Kupp's over 6.5 receptions. I think it's at minus 145 now. It could, it could go up, could go down, but yeah, minus 150.
Yep.
I still like it. I talked about his matchup. I just think that's too low for Cooper Kupp, especially with what he's done in targets that he's getting right now. Rarely do I think 6.5 is too low for a reception prop. Van Jefferson under 3.5. You see it there at minus 115. I'd much rather like this at plus money. But like I mentioned, Desean Jackson, I think he comes to play here. I think he's going to be the guy that's featured. So I don't necessarily like this number right now at minus 115. If plus money is the one that I want to do it at. And I mentioned DK Metcalf, his receptions, I think number 71.5. I think he goes under that because you take him out of the game, then it becomes much more one-dimensional in the sense of get the ball to your running backs, get the ball to Tyler Lockett, dink and dunk with the tight ends. But DK Metcalf, I'm a little worried about 71.5. And everyone's been talking about Darrell Henderson on his receptions, like his receiving yards at 20.5.
First time playing Fortnite, asking about that as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot because, again, the Seattle defense, not only are they giving up the most yards on the ground to running backs, they're also giving up the most receiving yards to running backs, like the second most receptions. And again, correlated of if you're like, and I like Darrell Henderson as a contrarian captain's play because I think everyone thinks, including yourself, Kauf, that this is going to be a shootout, but Seattle's run defense is not good. Mm-hmm. And so if that's the case, Darrell Henderson, while I don't think he gets a ton of yards on the ground, and Pierce mentioned this on the sweat earlier this morning, he can definitely get there at 20.5, minus 110. Got to lay some juice. I like that quite a bit. It's a pretty high number for Darrell Henderson, but again, this guy's been getting like 5 targets a game when he's healthy. If that's the case, 20.5 is pretty nice. And you know me, I always love taking the rushing props for the quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. So Matt Stafford over 5.5. Like Russ is 23.5. That's a little too much. But Stafford at minus 5.5, that's like one scramble. If he's on that bootleg and he doesn't see anything and needs to get a first down, 5.5 could be done in one attempt. So those are the props that I like.
Russ 23.5, the over under on rush yards.
A lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
All right. Henderson, by the way, it's 67.5. Let's see. Sony Michel, I'm surprised that he's even at 18.5, to be perfectly honest with you. Let's see if anything else jumps out here, and then we can make the move, obviously. Player parlays, those are always fun to look at. Is there anything for the player parlays that you really like?
No, not really. I mean, if I'm taking these, like parlays are kind of the I'm just gonna shoot for the moon type of play.
Yeah, they're dart throws to some degree.
But I mean, I always the first touchdown, those are the ones that like you got to pay attention to. And if you like, those are the ones that I like as the dart throws. And like the same way I try to do first round leader in golf is you want to take a flyer. I mean, like I said, Desean Jackson at plus 2,000 for a score. And you saw Darnold Parham score the first one on, what was that Sunday night with the Raiders and the Chargers. Darnold Parham, and he was plus 4,000. So you might as well take a shot on someone like Desean Jackson being the first touchdown, Gerald Everett, first touchdown, right? Those are the ones that you want because I think Everett is coming back. I think he's back.
We just got news actually. Everett is out tonight. He's still
okay. So then Will Dissly. I think Will Dissly is definitely a play on DK for value. Then first time, for us, I almost said first time playing Fortnite, first touchdown for Will Dissly, and I forget what his number is at, but it's pretty deep. That's the kind of stuff that I want to take a dart throw on. Yeah, same thing. Yeah, 2,800 plus 2,000 for Desean Jackson. Those are the dart throws that I like.
Beautiful. All right. Well, let's keep going with football just a little bit as we've got 10 or so minutes left here. And again, we'll do baseball and golf before we exit as well. But looking ahead to the Sunday slate, be it the main slate or obviously the Sunday night game, you can look at that as well. What I know you've spent some time during the week already projecting ahead, looking ahead, but what jumps out at you right now in terms of games that you want to spend the most attention on?
Well, for betting, I think Tennessee. What is it? It was at 3.5 for a long time, and now it's at 4. Tennessee against Jacksonville.
It is
AJ Brown.
Tennessee. Yep.
Yeah, AJ Brown is practicing. Julio isn't, but like, come on. Like, I know Jacksonville put up a good fight on Thursday against Cincinnati. I know Tennessee just lost to the Jets. Down a couple of receivers, right? In that game, that was the Jets Super Bowl, right? And I talked about this. I don't know if it was on Wednesday's show or our show last week. Week 4 is the time that you get upsets, that where everyone thinks they know everything and something happens and then you have it. Both New York teams win outright, including the Jets, which all of us thought that wasn't going to be the case. But at the same time, if you look at this rubber band effect of Tennessee losing to the Jets and Jacksonville looking like a team that could compete, all the stuff that's happening with Jacksonville, don't like it. AJ Brown is getting healthier. And even if he isn't, Tennessee is not going to lose this game. I can't imagine. Well, they're not going to lose this game, period, in my mind. And that could definitely come back to bite me. But I do think that -4 right now is still in play. If it gets, obviously you want it down to -3.5, but I still think -4 is fine.
Yeah, we'll see if the Jags go all win this one for Urban, but I'm just not so sure they're going to be able to keep up and get that done. Really interesting story, and you can decide how much it impacts your betting interest in the game. Carolina, 3-point favorites at home against the Eagles, and Christian McCaffrey is indicating he is going to play, or at the very least wants to play. What are your expectations here after just a 1-week absence for him?
Yeah, I know this is near and dear to your heart because you have him
sure
on,
is. Yeah, season long, baby.
So I know you wanted to get this one in. Look, that injury looks pretty bad. And initially they were like, this is a 3 to 4 week injury, and he'll be out. Sure, he wants to play. Everybody wants to play. Of course he's going to come out and say, I want to play, especially after last year where he didn't play at all. Right. And so he's chomping at the bit. And what you can't do with hamstrings is you can't re-aggravate. You can't push it because it's same with groin injuries, easily to re-injure and re-aggravate that muscle. Right. And so, like, I don't necessarily think they need him, Kauf. Like, of course, everyone, yes, Carolina would want to have Christian McCaffrey, but at the same time, like, this is your franchise player. You got a good thing, and like keeping him out another week, right, is fine. Like, Philadelphia's defense is not great. Carolina, like, you're getting Sam Darnold rushing at the goal line. He's got 5 rushing touchdowns, right? He's doing his best Christian McCaffrey impression inside the 5, inside the 10. So, when you have Chuba Hubbard, who's 70%, but you're deploying a 3 running back RBBC, like, Dallas, you ran into a buzzsaw with Dallas, but I don't think Carolina necessarily needs him against the Eagles right now, especially that defense that's got their own injuries to deal with. So I don't think he plays. I know he wants to, but I think he sits out at least 1 or 2 more weeks.
In terms of the games with the big spreads, there are really only a couple. The Vikings 10-point favorites at home against the Lions. You also have the Buccaneers, who are 10-point favorites at home against the Dolphins. Which one do you feel, if such a term exists, is the safer bet?
I mean, there's no such thing as a safer bet, but I mean, Miami going down to Tampa Bay, or going up, going up.
Both in Florida. Leave it there.
But from Hawaii, everything is going up. Right,
That's
fair. You're just going up, at any rate, I think Miami is not necessarily in play to win outright. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah. But keeping it close.
Yeah. And look, Tampa Bay, and we know Brady going to Miami when he was in New England was always a tough test, or just playing Miami in general for Brady has always been a tough test. And maybe that's more of a Patriot thing. But Miami's a team that covers, like Jacoby Brissett. Like, Tampa Bay's secondary has been bad, and I actually don't mind Jacoby Brissett for GPP sense for a quarterback this week on the slate, because, and it's probably like $5,000, $5,200. They're giving up 45 pass attempts per game. Now, are those going to land? Hopefully, but when you have a guy like Jalen Waddle who can definitely stretch his defense, that's a lot of points to give up to a team that, even though they're on the road, they have some players that they could use. And look, Tampa Bay is, a field goal off the crossbar, a pass interference. And I think Jeff mentioned this yesterday, and he made a really good point. They could be a lot worse in their record than they actually are right now. Right? Like, New England played their hearts out, their little hearts out and they
Easy.
almost beat Tom Brady.
Little hearts out.
You know, the little guys, almost little brother, almost beat big brother.
David and Goliath thing that was happening there that night for sure.
So when that's the case, I like getting, coming in 10 points is a lot. So I think the safer of the two, and like Minnesota's been playing really good football. I just don't trust Minnesota because we all know Minnesota can come back down to earth.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll take Miami.
Why don't we talk about Shriners, the Shriners Children's Open, which formerly known as the Shriners Hospitals for Children Open. It's changed its name here. So the Shriners Children's Open, round one, obviously, and many guys are in the clubhouse at this point. I don't believe round one has fully concluded yet. No, it hasn't. You get some guys that are still down in the 20s that are on the course at the moment still. But Sung Kang is the favorite, 2-shot lead on Sung Jae Im right now. Charlie Hoffman and Chad Ramey both tied with Im as well. It's obviously it's day one, round one. It's a very close field. You would expect it to be. I'm getting quite a bit of sun glare through the trees that are hitting me right at the right spot. I tell you, almost looking like almost villainesque. I feel like I need to get closer to the screen.
Gosh, don't do that.
I know. Can you see me okay? What do you think of day one here, Reid?
Yeah, I mean, Vegas gives the entertainment cap. No, that's New York. But there's a lot of fireworks right now. My boy Sanjay, a guy that I liked coming in, plus 2,800 pre-tournament, now is the shortest in odds at plus 800 right now to win. He's played really well, and Sung Kang outdid him and shot 10 under. So for all you first round leaders that bets that had Sanjay, sorry. Because Sung Kang, came in, and look, Sung Kang is a player that has these peak moments where he can do this, right? And on desert courses, desert locations, he's played well. But Sanjay is a guy that I'd be someone that I look at to hold on to this, and to keep the good things rolling, keep the good times rolling, especially in Vegas, right? He's had really good finishes at this tournament, at this course over his last two times playing here. And some other guys too that just going down, and we talk about this all the time, is guys who played well in approach but didn't necessarily play well putting, right? Peter Malnati was +3 in approach. He's at -1.5 strokes putting, and Malnati is down the board. I think he shot 4 under today. I don't necessarily think that he's someone that you have to go out and bet right now, especially with a guy like Sanjay at the top there. But he's someone to definitely take a look at. And someone too, that Joseph Bramlett, T48, someone that I also liked at deeper odds at plus 15,000 coming into this tournament, plus 13,000. He had an okay game with the approach, but he lost a ton putting. It's what he's been doing over the last handful of months. If he can get that right, and he practices in Vegas at 2 under, if he goes out and shoots 6-7 under, he's right back in this tournament. But right now, Sanjay, he's a guy that I really want in this tournament. And look, Sam Burns too. Sam Burns just won last week, Kauf. Mm-hmm. He's a guy that can go back to back, and he's done it before. So, Sam Burns, don't cut him out just because he won last week. He's at plus 2,000, and he's been playing well, man. He can go on a heater right now. And so don't count him out.
Some baseball for our last couple minutes, Reid. The Astros in the top of the 5th inning are just running away from the White Sox 5-0. In fact, one hitting Chicago currently in Houston in game 1 of their ALDS series. The other American League Division series begins tonight, of course. That is my beloved Red Sox in Tampa, technically St. Petersburg, to take on the Rays. You've got Eduardo Rodriguez and Shane McClanahan on the mound for that. Rodriguez, who has been inconsistent, certainly throughout the year, and against Tampa as well. I mean, he's been roughed up by them. He's shut them out over 6 innings in a start last month in Tampa. McClanahan is a rookie who's had his ups and downs as well. He's never obviously pitched at this stage, whereas you have Rodriguez, who is a 2018 World Series champ. Certainly the Red Sox are feeling good about themselves coming in after the wild card win over the Yankees, whereas you've got a Rays team that's been feeling good about itself all year, as it should, after 100 regular season wins and taking the American League East. When it comes to sports betting, I mean, we know baseball's baseball. You got the run and a half line, spread average coming into this one, the run line. The Rays understandably are the favored team. They won 11 out of 19 matchups against the Red Sox during the year. But some of that stuff I think gets thrown out the window when you get to this stage of the year, especially when, you can say, okay, well, the Red Sox were 8-11 against Tampa. Well, they also outscored them, in the aggregate. So it all depends on kind of what numbers you want to look at. What would your approach be to a series such as this?
Yeah, I mean, you take a look at the Rays. They're just a better team than the Red Sox, right? And look, the Red Sox have a lot of narrative going with them, right? That's just the Red Sox in the playoffs. This is such a narrative bet if you're going with the Red Sox, because if you look at both of these teams, like run differential, the Rays are plus 206 or 204 over the season, and the Red Sox are only plus 80. And when you talk about that, and you talk about the bullpen for the Rays, it's been solid. It's been really, really good. And you mentioned that matchup, and yes, like you can go into it thinking you have confidence, but the playoffs are an entirely different story. I still like the Rays because they're just a better team right now. And so even at that money line at minus 160, I think the Rays take this one just because of what they have. And look, the Red Sox, a lot was done to beat the Yankees in that wild card game to get into the playoffs. And the Rays are sitting there comfortably, like you mentioned, that top position. So I do like the Rays. I think they win this series, and I think they win game one.
I like the Red Sox because, of course, I do.
Hey, that's all you need. Sometimes, look, betting just because you like a team is a perfect example of just doing what you want to do, man. The numbers, we can call numbers all the time, but we're not there. We're not playing. We're not there.
Yeah.
These two teams are there, and the Red Sox are there for a reason. They're a good team. Just the Rays are better.
I'll tell you this. I do think the Red Sox are going to win the series.
Oh,
I don't feel great about game one. I don't feel great about game one. So just to tell you what you all need to know, there are no Madden sims tonight on account of Thursday night football in the NFL. As Eamon saying, we own McClanahan. Are you kidding me? Eamon is
Doyle rules.
Look, he's been roughed up before over the course of the season by the Red Sox. So yeah, let's get that done. Sox Rays ALDS game 1, 8:07 Fox Sports 1 NFL Network will have Thursday night football. The Rams at the Seahawks. That's at 8:00. You know which one will have my attention, but there'll be some commercial flipping, no doubt about it. We appreciate you joining us here. The slate comes your way after the 4:00 sim, right around 5:15 Eastern, Monday through Friday. The sweat is Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern, and then on Sundays, getting you ready for Sunday football as well. So you can catch Reid all the time across our various DraftKings channels and programs, Reid. And we want to thank Eamon, Daniel, our technical director. I am Adam Kaufman. I'll join you again tomorrow, not with Reid, but plenty of baseball talk. I will have Bukes and I believe LaMarca with me. Should be a good time. Reid, until the next time, my friend.
Adieu.
Go Sox.